Have you thought about how the food we eat shapes not only our bodies but our minds? Today I'm sharing a cozy Nordic-inspired comfort food recipe. Mashed potatoes with mushroom gravy and roasted potatoes and parsnips. It's not only delicious, but deeply meaningful for me. And I'll tell you why while we cook. Hi, I'm Anneli, and we're back in my kitchen because we're cooking some really good, delicious comfort food. And I'm going to show you the steps that I'm doing and tell you a little bit about why I chose to eat plant-based. I've already started my potatoes, so what I do is I use russet potatoes. I prefer those when I'm making mashed potatoes, and I peel them and then chop them up. You know, the smaller you chop them, the faster it cooks. And then after that, just some boiling salted water and boil them till they're tender because you're going to be mashing them. And because this is plant-based, I'm not using any butter. I'm using mostly olive oil. If I really want to try something, to make it extra creamy and rich, I'll use some plant-based butter. But I find olive oil and plant-based milk does the trick. Usually I used almond milk, but you can use oat milk. There's plant-based creams that you can use. I have never been told by anyone that my mashed potatoes is vegan. They have no idea. We're gonna use some delicious mushrooms to make the gravy. In Finland and Nordic countries, they love seasonal eating, and mushrooms, when they are around, that's what people love to eat. My mom loved mushrooms. I cannot say I liked them when I was growing up, but she would make certain mushroom dishes and a lot more of it as when we got older. I developed a love for mushrooms. What I would really love to have is some chanterelle mushrooms, but I don't have any. The water's boiling over there with the potatoes, but I don't have any. And I know that they're really popular because a few years back when I was there, and it wasn't even seasoned, so there must have been an extremely warm summer there, because as I was on the buses, there was people carrying like bags of chanterelle mushrooms. So I don't have them, so I've used what we have, just brown mushrooms, and I have some king oyster mushrooms, so I'm going to use that. And then the other thing that I have is dried mushrooms. I have this one, and it's called dried forest mushrooms. So basically you put them in some boiling water and let it soak, and then you can use the mushrooms because they rehydrate, chop them up, add them to whatever you want, and then even use the liquid for the stock in the gravy. I'm going to turn the oven on because I'm going to get the parsnips and carrots ready to put in the oven, and then we're going to make the gravy, and then when the potatoes have softened, I'm going to do the mashed potatoes. So let's just move these guys out of the way for a minute. I'm going to turn the oven on to 400. That's how I like to roast my veggies. I have my pan. I'm going to use parchment paper in there just to make it easier to clean up. I've got all these things here. I'm going to just move them right out of the way. So parsnips are not white carrots, even though there are white. I think white carrots is the original way that carrots looked before they became orange. I can't remember the history of it, but carrots taste like a root vegetable, like a turnip to me. So I'm going to cut them up like carrots, and then I'm going to roast them in the oven, just the same as a carrot. One of the things I became plant-based back when I was at 40, and I'm 50 years old now. And I did it because I really didn't know what to do. That's over 10 years ago, probably 15, 16 years ago. There wasn't as much information out there about preventing some really disastrous chronic illnesses. And what happened with us is that when I was a young girl, my grandfather, my mom's dad, started to show signs of dementia. And I believe his family had some of it in the family history. I just remember talk about it. And I was 15, 16 years old. And my grandfather would have, sometimes go missing at night. My grandmother had to put alarms, and just back then in the 80s and late 70s, 80s, things weren't as sophisticated. We didn't have the technology we do now. So she had to hang these hangers on the doors that if they were moved, it would alarm. And the sad part of it is that we were young and, silly, and we didn't know. You don't think about the future as, at that age, at least I didn't. And some of the things were funny, and we'd laugh about it. And, one time he went missing, and the police brought him back because down the road, several blocks away, was a nursing home, like a seniors type of house, a house that had been turned into a seniors home. And it was summertime, and they were having coffee and tea in the afternoon out on the lawn outside under umbrellas and chairs. But the staff had noticed they had an extra person there. It was my grandfather sitting there enjoying coffee. So the police in the town he lived in got to know him, because sadly he would also take off at night, be going down the road in his long johns and things like that. So it's devastating to a family because it's so difficult, and it's so much work to care for them. It's exhausting, but because they're your loved ones, obviously you do it. So that we always knew. And then growing up, wondering when it was going to hit the next person was kind of the dreary kind of a sense that you always had. You're always watching for signs. When is this going to happen again? I don't do much to my vegetables. I do like to drizzle them with olive oil. And if you're trying to cut calories, you can always, use a lot less, and you don't even have to use olive oil to roast. Then I basically add some salt, pepper. Sometimes I'll add dill or different herbs to it. And today I'm just going to add some salt and pepper. And I think that is good. And maybe a little bit of dill, because I think dill would be good for it too. I love dill. And I would even put this in my gravy, but today I'm just going to use this parsley that I have left over. I tried to make them all the same size because obviously that'll give you a better chance of having everything cook and be done at the same time. Some of these carrots are tinier, so hopefully it'll work out. Maybe I'll just try to barricade them so they're not on the edges going to get burnt. I've put the parsnips and carrots in the oven, and usually it takes about 30 minutes, depending on the size, 25, 30 minutes on 400 or 425 to get done. So I've got the mashed potatoes. I've drained the water out, and now I'm going to get on with the gravy. If you don't want to use oil, you can actually saute in water or some vegetable broth, but today I'm using oil. When I heat up the pan and start cutting up some of these mushrooms, and I'll show you what I'll do with this stuff here, the dried mushrooms. I wish I could have found dried chanterelles, but I don't even know if they have that. I've got a lot of different things here that I'll show you that I sometimes use to flavor the gravy. Today I had a leftover shallot in the pantry, so I'm going to use this up instead of onion. Most of the time I just chop an onion, but why not use this, because I don't want it to go to waste. I love cooking and using up things I have in my fridge. It drives me nuts because a lot of times things go to waste, and my husband likes to tease me about the state of the vegetables in the crisper or whatever. I try to eat them all up and not let things go to waste, because that's not good. I remember when I started to see the signs in my mom, because when you grow up with somebody that's had Alzheimer's, And you've seen what it does to a family and what it does to them. Even if you're young like I was young and kind of naive, and I also didn't know about Alzheimer's versus dementia. I just thought it was old age at that time probably. But when you've gone through it, you will remember it. And as you get older and you learn more, it's going to impact your actions and how you think. So when my mom started getting to the age, and she outlived her dad, but when she started getting older, I started to keep an eye on her. And oh my gosh, the first times I saw that look in her eyes of confusion, I knew. And I'd bring it up to my sisters. I'm the oldest. I bring it up to them and think, oh, she's still doing okay. She's living on her own. No, that's just mom. That's just mom. My mom did have some quirks. She was, I'm just gonna put olive oil in the pan and put the shallots in, and now my eyes are starting to tear. It's a strong shallot. Because we're gonna make a gravy with this, I'm actually using extra olive oil because I'm gonna be adding flour to it later. So if I was using just water or vegetable broth to saute my vegetables, I would probably end up using cornstarch slurry, because that cornstarch will dissolve and mix well in cold water, because you're not going to do very well with a flour in water or something like that. So anyway, when I started seeing the signs of my mom, it was sad, and it gradually started to build and they started to agree. But she ended up living on her own for quite a while, and that was good, but it was a very hard and difficult time, and then she finally passed away. But she lived at home till the end, because my brother ended up looking after her, as well as all of us, and my younger sister, who lived closest to her, spent the majority of the time looking after her and caring for her, along with some home supports that were provided for her. So right now I've got the shallots in the olive oil in the pan. The carrots and parsnips are roasting. The mashed potatoes are ready to be mashed, but let's do this mushroom gravy right now. You can cut up your mushrooms whatever size you want, whatever thickness, but no matter what you do, they will shrivel up to nothing. So even if it looks like you've got so many mushrooms in here, I don't know, they kind of just disappear. There's different textures of mushrooms. So I was going to, but I didn't get any shiitake mushrooms, which are more, I want to say tougher, but they're not tough, but they're denser, so they're chewier. And I find, because I had some of this king oyster mushroom, I thought, well, no, I'll just use that up, and because that has some texture to it, and it stays tasting kind of chewy. So I sometimes use mushrooms like this in soup, because it's really good. Like it doesn't kind of just fall apart. You can actually taste it, and I swear, I think my husband said, "Did you put meat in this?" I guess the soup had a lot of flavor. It was not bland. So it's funny, I'm sure he said something like that. So here's this. I'll just give it 1 more minute, and then I'll put the mushrooms in and chop this one up. My mom loved mushrooms. I didn't care for them as a kid growing up, but I have come to love these things. They are so delicious. And once they have kind of sauteed down and all the waters come out of them, you can add your broth. What I like to do is add some vegetable broth, some bouillon of some kind. Let's see what I have here. I've got this. It's powdered form, but you can get the cubes. You can buy doesn't taste like, what is that stuff? Doesn't taste like chicken. Because I also have the dry mushrooms, I'm going to use the water out of here once I take the mushrooms out, and put that in there. And to make the gravy creamier, like they do, like Swedish meatballs and that creamy gravy, sometimes I'll add a plant-based milk along with the broth to make the gravy creamier. All right, now I'm going to put these into the pot here. let's add this guy here. I cut off this end. I don't think that's edible. I learned a lot more about mushrooms and which ones to use from my daughter-in-law. Being Korean, they eat a lot of mushrooms, and I've even got these little skinny enoki mushrooms that I now add to soup, and they're so good. Like, I had never cooked with these ones prior to her showing me the way. If there isn't enough oil in here once I'm ready to put the flour in, I will add a little bit more oil. And I don't need to add these mushrooms in because they're already, you know, they're just rehydrated. I'll put them in towards the end. And I'm going to add all my things to add flavor to this in the a little bit later too. So what I do with this is the water was boiling when I put them in here. They've been sitting in there for quite a while, probably longer than they need to, but I just scoop out the mushrooms, chop them up, and throw them into whatever I'm using. Actually, the good thing about it, the fact that they've sat in here for a while, is the water is cooler and I can handle it without burning my fingers, which I sometimes do, actually a lot. One thing when you're pouring the water out of this, just be careful because a lot of the sediment comes to the bottom. So just pour the water slowly and gently and leave the little bottom bit at the bottom, so because it could have some grit from the mushrooms in there. So when I'm ready to use that, I will. And I just give these a little bit of a chop. Now, there's all kinds of mushrooms in here. I don't know what forest mushrooms are, but it adds a bit of different texture. So this is about the point where I'm going to just add a tiny bit more oil. I'm going to add these rehydrated mushrooms. And I'm going to add the flour in there to cook off the flour. This little guy is a thing from Finland that I got. It's 100 mils or 1 deciliter, which is less than half a cup. I don't think I'll use all this, but I'm just going to sprinkle it in here. And when I've done this, after it's cooked for about a minute, I have to add the liquid in. So I'll add first that mushroom water, then a little bit more water and bouillon. And then I'm going to flavor it up with some stuff, and then maybe add a little bit of the plant-based milk to it to make it a little bit creamier. At this point, you can scrape the bits off the bottom because it will have stuck to the pan. And when the heat comes up, it'll start to release and start to thicken up right away. I'm going to turn the heat up because I'm going to want to bring this to a simmer. I'm going to add the water in. So I've added about a cup, or maybe a little bit more. I'm going to add some of the, if you don't have a bouillon cube, or if you have one of these, just add some of the bouillon in. Or if you have vegetable stock, whatever you have. Now this is where it becomes optional what you do. I'm going to add a little bit of thyme, dried thyme. I am going to add a little bit of tomato paste this time too. This is where you can just kind of do whatever you prefer. I'm also going to add some tamari. I got into this habit when I was watching the two twins from Ireland. Anyways, I'll put their on screen here, but I love all their recipes and they love their tamari, at least one of them does. The other things that I always add, Dijon mustard, any kind. I sometimes add Marmite. I knew somebody from New Zealand and they use Marmite. Marmite adds another layer depth of flavor. So I add mustard, and then the other thing, you can also add Worcestershire sauce if you have that. There's vegan options for this. I don't personally like those ones. I've tried them. But look at how good this looks, because you're also trying to get it to look brown so it's not all pale with the flour in it. I'm going to let this simmer for a while and then season it with salt and pepper after I taste it. And I still have to add the mustard in. You can also add dry mustard powder. So many options to create different, more flavor depending on, what you're feeling like. But because I added the tamari, I haven't yet added any salt to this. The only thing I've salted are the parsnips and carrots and the mashed potato water so far. But that's why I'll let it sit and simmer for a while and then adjust the seasoning. But I'm going to add for sure the mustard and some pepper, probably a bit of salt, and I'll go from there. And the plant-based milk to make it a little bit creamier. Okay, we're making the mashed potatoes now, and sadly I had my mic off while I did some of the work already, and we'll just continue on. Now that I work in the clinic, the medical clinic, I'm faced with a lot of people that are my age that are bringing their mom or dad or both in for cognitive testing because they're concerned about dementia. And one of the things they say to me is, could it be that they're just refusing to take the test? Because they seem okay to me. They're managing at home. In reality, they're not. And I feel for them because they're going through what we did. When you start to see the signs, and when somebody has a type of dementia, they try to cover up. They can cover up with humor. They can cover up by just refusing to do things, saying, nope, I'm in a bad mood, I'm not doing that. Aggressiveness, so many different things. So I feel for them. Even us, knowing that our family history, me, a nurse, that saw lots of people like that throughout my career, still we were doubting if that was the case with my mom. But yeah, it was. But when that was happening with her and my aunt, it spurred me on. And in the, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was still limited information. So I just went all out plant-based because I know from working in like a cardiac surgery unit, ICU and emergency, if you're eating a well-rounded, healthy plant-based diet, you have less chance of getting a lot of the things that kill people, that bring you to emergency, like heart attacks and strokes. Not saying it doesn't happen, but it improves your chances if you're eating a well-rounded, healthy diet. There's more information now. And, as I was a plant-based eater, I started to feel empathy for the animals. So now I almost do it for the animals versus the health, because there's different studies out now, and I do follow the research, and there's benefits to eating fatty fish, just that I don't want all the fish to be fished out of the oceans, so that's the problem. So that's it, super easy plant-based mashed potatoes. You can't go wrong with that. You can always eat delicious comfort food, even if you're eating vegan and plant-based. So there's nothing wrong with these. Nobody's ever questioned my mashed potatoes. This looks really good. I'm going to add some milk because it is nice and thick. A lot of people have the concern that they don't know how to eat plant-based. Well, I just, you know what, it was just a trial and error, and I only ate, my way of starting out to be plant-based was eating the side dishes that I made for my family. We were just we ate regular foods, you know, sometimes good, healthy foods, sometimes not so healthy. But I started to eat, I just didn't eat the meat and then all the other stuff. And that's how I slowly started eating more plants. You can't go wrong with eating more plants. And if you can make it taste delicious and healthy and taste comforting, then why not? All you're doing is adding increased fiber to your diet and lots of other nutrients that you wouldn't have if you just ate lots of meat. I'm gonna give it a taste. The other thing, you know, you want to make lots of gravy. You can always save it because this is delicious on anything. It needs more stuff, so yes. I'll definitely add some salt. Definitely add pepper. I'm actually going to add some garlic powder and a big dollop of mustard. I'm going to bring that to a simmer again, let it just simmer just for a couple of minutes, and toss in the parsley that I've already chopped up. Oh, doesn't that look good? This, you can do anything you want with your mashed potatoes and gravy. I decided just to have some carrots and parsnip. You can make all kinds of other things, obviously, with it. This is just what I'm having today. I'm not worried about, you know, my protein intake at this point. Every plant has a little bit of protein in it. So they all have a little bit, and depending on what you've been eating, you're entitled to some comfort food once in a while. Let's add the parsley in that I've already chopped. Perfect. So I tasted it again. I seasoned it with the salt and pepper and added the Dijon, and it's perfect. One thing I like to do that you don't need to do, but a little bit of balsamic vinegar makes everything taste so good. I'm just adding a little bit of that. And then I'm going to put it on a plate. But this alone is perfect, but if you have some greens, you can throw that on the side. But it's so yummy and delicious. Seeing dementia in my family wasn't easy at all, but it really led me to look after my health and prioritize it in a very joyful and sustainable manner. So I put this delicious meal on my plate. I've got my mashed potatoes, my gravy, delicious root vegetables, the parsnips and carrots, and then just a little bit of greens just to have on the side. If you don't even have those, who cares? I usually don't, because I could eat a bucket load of potatoes and gravy. It looks pretty. It's so yummy and comforting. It's the perfect type of food on a winter day or winter evening. I hope this meal encourages you and inspires you to cook something nourishing for yourself this week. If you'd like more plant-based recipes and ways to prioritize your health, then subscribe to the channel and check out my cozy plant-based cooking playlist. Let's make this year one of health and happiness. I will see you in the next video. Bye.